Hi, my name is Jeff Bradshaw. I'm the VP of Global Technology over at TELUS Agriculture. And I'm going to talk to you about enabling more efficient production with event-driven architecture. So firstly, happy Star Wars Day. Just a little bit about me. I am, let's say, VP of Global Technology at TELUS Agriculture. Formerly, I was a CTO at ProAgrica, so another good agricultural technology company. Prior to that, I was the founder and CTO at Adaptrus, a long-standing integration company, and actually a partner of Solus. I've worked with enterprise integration since 1994, so not as young as I clearly appear. But yeah, that's a bit of bio for me. As you can see from the rugby paraphernalia in the background, I'm a huge rugby fan. So yeah, spent a lot of time over at Twickenham, not playing unfortunately anymore. So firstly, who's TELUS? So obviously the Canadians in the audience should recognize this and be able to answer this very clearly. TELUS actually is the largest telco in Canada by revenue. One of the, I think, the fastest 5G network in North American market. Huge focus there for us as a business. And being a telco, one of the core revenue streams obviously is around the wired lines and the mobile. Obviously, one of the key things then was how do we diversify? So there's a separate TELUS business unit which focus on the large, kind of B2B type plays. Then latterly they decided to divest and do different things. So rather than rely on the telco revenues, look at other streams. So they created TELUS International, which is the largest number of employees. They effectively look after outsource offshore development and support centers. So one of the big skills of TELUS is creating customer service environments, and they decided to spin it out as a separate entity very successfully. They then got into the healthcare market in Canada. So again, quite regulated environment, very focused on the patient records and all these kind of things and electronic pharmacies. And once they got into healthcare, they then decided, well, what are the big things that can influence outcome in health? And the thesis came back that, well, let's get into agriculture and help food and help production of food. So with the newest business unit in the family, rather rapid growth area. And we actually are an international entity as well. I'm based here in the UK. We have operations across North America, South America, all across Europe, and down in Asia, and also down in Australia. So it is a global entity, and obviously our systems have to cope with that fact as well, which is quite an interesting thing. So why get involved in agriculture? So as I mentioned before, it's an opportunity to diversify. It's also, TELUS as a company are very strong in the social capitalism area. If you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll see lots of good stuff that TELUS do within the communities, both in Canada and abroad, and also leveraging experience on health. So around data, lots of knowledge around data and integration and key parts of that. And ultimately, the better agriculture information leads to better food outcomes, which hopefully leads to better health. So our mission as TELUS Agriculture is creating the best producer to consumer outcomes. That's not technology producer to consumers. It's actually people like you and me enjoying great quality produce. Firstly, on the agri side, we also have a very large food, beverage, and CPG operation. So again, you could be working with battery manufacturers or alcohol manufacturers. For us, they're still producers and consumers. So we deliver digital insights and empower and connect the customers all along the value chain. And that's the key thing here is it's all along the value chain globally. So quality, safety, distribution, and sustainability are all key parts of our message and what we deliver to our customers, whether they be food or consumer goods. So our core strategy really is connecting. So that plays down to the 5G networks and the IoT devices in the field, digitizing that data. This, ag as an industry is quite behind a lot of others. There are pockets of excellence, but then there's lots of stuff that's not actually automated and still paper receipts flying around. Obviously, optimizing what our customers are doing and help them gain insights into their business. And that's a really key one because the supply chain in agriculture is one of the most fragmented of any industry, actually. Manufacturers don't sell direct to consumer. You've got one and often two hops in the way. The people doing the selling largely are agronomists, which are kind of plant doctors, for those of you not ag people. And so the farmer generally gets a recommendation from an agronomist and then goes and buys the products, but that's whether he can get it or not. I'll come on to that a little bit later on. And obviously exchanging that information in a more real-time way. You know, certain processes in ag generally take place at the end of season. It's a very seasonal business. So we need to be able to get that to a more real-time, more instant gratification, if you will, of the data. So what are we building right now? So our flagship product, the thing that underpins everything we do, is my baby. It's a product called ADX. And the idea being it's the line in the middle. So we work on the left-hand side with the agricultural manufacturers, so the likes of the Bayers, the BASFs, the Syngentas of this world. We work with the ag input retailers. So North American Nutrien is a popular one. And there are many other ag retail companies. They're very fragmented retail environments. We work with ranches and farms. So we have quite a large cow-calf operation that we support. So it's like a cow hotel, if you will, for a period of time as they're growing and developing. Then we work with obviously manufacturers and distribution. So, you know, guys that make the food products we eat, the CPG products we eat at home. Logistics and transport, obviously, it's a key linkage all the way along the path. There's data coming from trucking. And again, I'll talk a little bit about our cold chain offering there. And finally, up on the grocery food service. So this goes towards, you know, looking at the behavior. So taking point of sale data, taking consumer behavior, looking at replenishment of stores, optimizing what's on the shelf in particular areas, and monitoring performance of service as well. So quite a big thing. And this is, you know, a very simple slide, but actually the integration, for the integration guys in the room, as you can imagine, it's very, very complicated. You know, there's more data in ag than probably any other industry in the world. But as I always say, it's the dirtiest form of data that requires a bit more work to actually make it useful and make it more interesting. So where do we use event-driven architecture? So I mentioned ADX, which is our kind of backbone across the business. ADX surfaces data up via APIs. And obviously behind the scenes, we're using our kind of event-driven architecture. Big areas where so first phases of ADX, obviously it's still, you know, it's in its infancy as a product. We're probably 8 months in to the delivery of the platform. Is around collection of data from retail, so point of sale data, inventory data, you know, goods receipt notes, those sorts of things, which we then can glean information around products from and use those in analytics capabilities. IoT is a huge area for us right now. We've just gone live with our cold chain product, which is, I love this one. It's one of my favorite ones because it's really tangible. One of the biggest areas of food waste in the world, actually food waste is one of the biggest challenges. So everyone talks in ag about, you know, upping production, upping yield, focusing on what comes out of the field. But actually we lose something like 35% of all food that's produced to waste. And we had a real good use case with our cold chain products. So cold chain includes these little tear off tags that go into the pallets of food. And you can then track them for things like temperature, you know, bumping and all this kind of stuff. You know, someone's throwing the pallets around. And we actually worked very closely with one of our customers down in Australia, a big retailer, and the brief of the project was they were losing 2 days of shelf life on strawberries. So high value fruit, and they're trucking them down from Queensland down to a distribution centre. And they were wondering what was going on. Why were they losing this 2 days of shelf life on the produce? So we got involved with our cold chain product, the first release, got the tags in at farm level, so they're loading the berries into the trucks on the farm. Trucker drives down to the distribution centre and they're unloaded. And now generally, again, for those of you that haven't been in this environment, you'll see a guy when they open the truck at the distribution centre monitoring temperature at the back of the truck to make sure it's within tolerance. One of the things we've learned from the current crisis in Ukraine is fuel is very expensive. So pretty much the only variable cost that these third-party truck drivers have is their fuel. And it's quite a long drive across the state of Queensland in Australia, for those of you who've never been. So they picked the produce up. What we found actually in the first week of the proof of concept phase was they picked the product up. The first thing they do is put the truck into eco mode, then drive the sort of 12 hours down to the distribution centre. An hour outside of the distribution centre, magically the truck goes really cold because they realise they're about to deliver. And when they get to the destination, they're going to be temperature checked. So they turn the engine back down, they turn the freezers right the way down. And the net result of this was again, these refrigerated trucks, the strawberries at one end of the truck were basically frozen, and at the back of the truck, beside the doors, they were just barely coming to the right temperature. So yes, they passed a quality check when the guy comes in with the temperature check, but actually they've damaged the goods by doing that and treating them that way. And this is something we couldn't find out with general standard sensors. We couldn't find these things out until we actually started collecting the data. Now, the tags are emitting a lot of data, and we're capturing it in real time as the produce is flowing down the road. We're actually getting all this data. So again, great amount of data, very rich data to play with, very rich sets of events. But again, using our event-driven architecture, we can actually ping those where we see a truck going out of temperature. And actually these sort of events, then we can push back to the driver and say, hey, the trailer's not at the right temperature. What are you doing? So we can actually start to capture those sorts of things and offer real-time insights. So even after the first couple of weeks of this project, the customer actually saved those 2 days. So it's a really, they saved 2 days of shelf life of strawberries, massive waste reduction, hugely successful project, and we're rolling it out across the world now at the moment. Obviously, the limitation there being the tags. They're pretty cool. I haven't got one with me, unfortunately. But they're tiny little tags, and you literally just tear it and put it into the pallet with the goods, and yeah, they can track different things. So again, lots of data. And for IoT, for us, it's a huge area. We do a lot of field data via our legacy AGI business. So pulling back what's going on the field in the farm. There's a lot of talk in the industry about a variable rate. So if you imagine, historically, you just blanket spray or blanket fertilize a field. Fertilizer, again, another issue with the energy cost. Fertilizer is incredibly expensive. So what they like to try and do now is do more variable rate. So only apply the product where they need it across the field. And we're working with a number of customers where we are the kind of single voice of truth. So did the variable rate give a positive yield? Did it work? So capturing all of that data across a single field. Just for context, the tractor generally in season generates about 350, 360 megabytes of data per day when it's working. So if you multiply up the amount of machines and the amount of trailers and all the other bits and bobs, we are talking about quite large volumes of data. Okay. The other thing I'll tell you is a little stat. The world's most popular crop is a crop called crop 1, because that's generally what comes off when the farmer doesn't bother setting the crop type in the screen in the John Deere tractor when he's rolling. So yeah, a little bit of trivia for you there. We also, obviously, weather data. If you look at things that influence what's going on the field, weather is one of the big ones. And then we also use it for billing. So we can see who's using what data. Obviously, the events are flowing around, so we can just consume those events and generate billing off the back of that. So these are the kind of really early projects that we've got in production now. And we've got a whole raft more coming down the line. So it's accelerating rather rapidly as people are seeing the benefit. Because really, we're trying to move this seasonal business into a much more real-time business. So here's give you a bit of example about some of the things we've connected. The other thing I didn't mention earlier on, which I probably should have done, is TELUS Agriculture actually grew up via a number of acquisitions. So we've got about, I think, 12 different acquisitions that we've made over the last couple of years. So again, part of the challenge is stitching all those silos of data together, which is, again, a primary role of our ADX platform. So hooking these things up, whether it's farm management data. So FMS is farm management software, which we have, I think, 4 different types within our portfolio today, spread around the world. Varying qualities of data in there. Weather partners, we pull that in from partners. We don't have our own. We have weather stations from partners. We don't have our own weather service, so we use third-party data for that one. Obviously, imagery from various sources. You can see NASA there, and the European Space Agency and Planet. And then obviously the equipment manufacturers, and you'll probably recognize those. It's a bit of a who's who of machinery providers in the ag sector. And then for those of you in a more traditional business, you'll recognize some of the ERP packages and things that we work with. There are some very specific farm ones, but also we work with the big ones as well, because a lot of our customers run those big entities. So very traditional kind of integration platform here, but again, using that the EDA backbone and pub sub model to share the data around the business and store it and curate it. So main reasons we use the event-driven architecture in our use cases is really about the customer and empowering them to make that real-time decision. The industry generally is a lot slower, a lot more legacy. farmer will make about 14 decisions during the season, but doesn't know the result until he harvests at the end, right? So always remember there's no instant gratification in farming unless you're doing animal, but that's slightly different if the animals get sick. So yeah, optimizing rebate is a huge area for us. The other thing as well is stock. So if you think about seeding, for example, it's one of those interesting ones where you don't know what seed you've got to sell before it's been brought in, cleaned, bagged, and sent back out again. And you've got a very small window of the year when farmers actually go and buy the seed, because, depending on the growing season, right? The weather's got to be right to plant. You've got to drill it the right thing. The moisture has got to be good. There's lots of conditions about when they grow. I'd urge everybody to watch Clarkson's Farm, because it's quite funny, but it gives a really good insight into life as a farmer and what they get involved in and the decisions they have to make. Also things like, so where's stock in the supply chain? So where are my seeds? Oh, I need this crop protection. Where can I get it from? Is always a big thing. And also things like yield. So obviously we're taking that machinery data as they're harvesting it. So pulling back things like moisture content, protein as it's being processed, all these good things, and feeding that data back to the farmers to, again, help them make better decisions, better plans for their crops for the following years. That's all really, really important. And again, one of the biggest uses actually for me is, and anyone who's worked in IoT will know this, there are a lot of events when you're dealing with IoT. It's just the sensor example I gave earlier on around the cold chain. Every few seconds, these things are telling you what they're doing. They're very needy. They're always telling you. So actually, the big thing really is filtering out the wheat from the chaff, right? What do I care? What events do I actually care about? And be able to filter and subscribe based on those things. So really key use cases actually. And we have many, many more that we're rolling out. I mean, for us, the ADX platform is our flagship. It's the key platform to TELUS Agriculture. And it's the thing we deliver our services on, and all the next gen platforms are all based around this. So it's absolutely key to what we do. So thanks for listening. Hopefully that's given you some insights into some of the things we're up to within TELUS Agriculture and also within wider TELUS. Certainly if you want to find out more, or you're interested in some of the stuff we're doing, obviously I've got a food beverage screenshot here. The other end of the supply chain, or over to the right, as I always say. Please feel free to reach out to me, jeff.bradshaw@telus.com. Yeah, always happy to hear from people who are interested in the industry and finding out what we're up to. So yeah, get in touch. Thank you.